Commerce for several years. And both CII and the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce are today, if one can say, a catalytic role towards creating value chains and providing platform for the private sector of both countries to further deepen their engagements. And we are looking forward to many more of the fruitful partnerships and collaborations in strengthening India-Sri Lanka economic relations as we go along in the future as well. Excellencies, Sri Lanka has been accorded the highest priority, as all of us know, in India's foreign and external economic framework. And Indian industry really aligns with this and believes that building mutual stakes in each other's development is the best strategy for closer ties. And for this, Indian industry would really like to further boost its investments into Sri Lanka. And both India and Sri Lanka today, we enjoy a very vibrant and a growing economic and commercial partnership, with bilateral trade growing pretty rapidly in the last decade, and a number of leading Indian private sector are pretty much investing in Sri Lanka, establishing a very strong connective, one can say, and a strong presence in that country. And Sri Lanka is one of the largest trade partners in SAARC. India is Sri Lanka's largest trade partner globally. Much of the impetus for the current level of our economic interaction really stemmed from the signing of an entry into force of the FTA, the Free Trade Agreement, way back in 1998 and 2000, if one goes back in time. And with a very successful today, a very, very successful vaccine rollout, we can see a bright light at the end of the tunnel. As rightly said by the Honorable Minister of India, the Health Minister of our country, Dr. Harshavardhan, he said, and I quote, "We are at the end game of the COVID-19 pandemic in India. We in India, we in Indian industry believe that the pandemic such as this only reinforces the need for us to work together and for us to find solutions." So India has really been privileged with its partners in South Asia to help combat this particular outbreak. And it has really helped set SAARC COVID Emergency Fund at the very outset. And being the pharmacy to the world, if one can say, India provides much needed medicines and medical equipments to countries in the region to fight the pandemic. Just a couple of points I just wanted to mention at this particular stage, where we see areas where we can work together. First, of course, the digital economy and e-governance, and that could be an important area of cooperation. And it not only promotes technology upgradation, but also it will help, I believe, generate employment, and improving digital connectivity in Sri Lanka can be an area that Indian companies could look at. And this would be an opportune time for the government to introduce e-government services in order to reduce crowds gathering at many places and minimize face-to-face contact while promoting the overall productivity of the public. Second point I really wanted to focus on was, of course, on education. And Sri Lanka spends a substantial amount of foreign currency for education in Australia, UK, US, of course, even Malaysia. And there is enormous scope for Indian education sector to open up campuses in Sri Lanka, which will also help Sri Lanka in conserving foreign currency reserves. The third point I just wanted to focus on is something which really touches people to people, and that's tourism. It's one of the worst hit sectors at this point in time, but a huge potential, and I don't need to talk more about it to this particular audience. The fourth area, of course, which I listed was on pharmaceuticals. And as Sri Lanka is aiming to develop a very strong pharma industry that can penetrate the global market, there lies immense opportunity for collaboration with Indian companies by providing an enabling regulatory framework and infrastructure. Sri Lanka can create the grounds for the real ground conditions which are necessary for the pharmaceutical companies to be attracted from India. And the last sector that I really wanted to talk about was that on textiles. And that again is a huge area of collaboration. And several orders during the pandemic had got cancelled, and it had affected the textile sector badly. But Indian companies in these sectors can look at collaboration with Sri Lankan counterparts in creating value chain. So the potential are immense, and I just listed some of the areas which from our institution we have been working on with our counterparts and with others to see the opportunities. But we have a fascinating group, as I mentioned today, who will and such luminaries who will give us the insights as to how do we take this forward and how do we build on this already very well established strong relationship. With that, once again, ladies and gentlemen, my warm welcome and sincere gratitude to such very important people who have made time today to be with us. And I would now request Mr. Manjula De Silva, the CEO of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, to give his remarks, please.
Good morning, Honorable Dinesh Gunawardena, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Sri Lanka, who I believe will be joining any moment now. His Excellency Gopal Bagle, High Commissioner of India to Sri Lanka, Mr. Suresh Prabhu, Member of Parliament of India, Mr. Niluka Kadurugamuwa, Acting High Commissioner of Sri Lanka to India, Mr. Chandrajit Banerjee, Director General, CII, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, let me extend a warm welcome to all of you to this conference. And I wish to thank CII for inviting the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce to be a partner in hosting this very important digital conference on enhancing India-Sri Lanka economic relations. Being close neighbors, we have enjoyed very strong economic relations in the areas of trade, investment, and travel for centuries. If you look at the current position, in 2020, the total trade flows between the two countries amounted to 3.6 billion US dollars, comprising $3 billion of imports from India to Sri Lanka and $600 million of exports from Sri Lanka to India. In recent years, India has been one of the top two sources of imports to Sri Lanka and the third largest destination for exports. So that shows the importance of India from a Sri Lankan perspective. If you look at tourist arrivals, India has been the single largest source of tourists to Sri Lanka, accounting for 19% of the arrivals in 2019, which status was maintained even in the first 2 months of 2020. Of course, as you know, after that, the borders were closed and there had been very little tourism since then. In terms of FDI, India has been the second largest investor in 2019, accounting for 12% of FDI inflows. And also it's interesting to note that a few Sri Lankan companies have also started making significant investments in India in recent times. These are all numbers that can grow a lot from these levels. And we hope that today's deliberations will create a platform for that to happen. I must say that we greatly value and cherish our long-standing relationship with CII and look forward to collaborating further with you, Mr. Banerjee, to promote trade, investment and travel between our two countries in the areas that you spoke about and many more. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. De Silva, and thanks for those very warm words towards the CII, and also talking about how we could collaborate further in taking this forward. With that, it is my pleasure now to invite the Acting High Commissioner of Sri Lanka to India, Mr. Niluka Kadurugamuwa, to give his remarks, please.
Thank you. But can you hear me?
Yes, please. Yes, loud and clear.
Yes, thank you. The Honorable Dinesh Gunawardena, Foreign Minister of Sri Lanka, the Honorable Suresh Prabhu, Member of Parliament and India's Sherpa to G20 and G7, His Excellency Gopal Bagle, High Commissioner of India to Sri Lanka, Mr. Chandrajit Banerjee, Director General CII, Mr. Manjari Silva, CEO, Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, distinguished panelists and participants. I consider it indeed an honor and privilege to make a few remarks at this important conference, and I thank the organizers for the opportunity. At the outset, let me express our deep appreciation to the Confederation of Indian Industry for arranging this digital conference on enhancing India-Sri Lanka economic relations. Ceylon Chamber of Commerce has always been participating actively in the partnership summits organized by the Confederation of Indian Industry annually to further enhance and strengthen business ties between the two countries. In the year 2020, due to pandemic situation, the event was postponed. Today, I recognize the efforts of the CII to hold this event on a virtual platform with the participation of eminent members from the CII and Ceylon Chamber of Commerce. CII being a business and industry-oriented apex body in India, this is the most appropriate timing to engage in dialogue with focus on deepening business and investment ties between India and Sri Lanka, and to explore opportunities for collaboration when economic recovery has become a top priority for all nations, including Sri Lanka and India, following the severe effect of the global pandemic. India is one of our key markets as a trading partner, foreign investor, as well as the generator of the highest number of outbound tourists to Sri Lanka. I believe this is the time we should collaborate jointly to chart our way forward for mutual benefit. Despite pandemic threat, Sri Lanka's total export earnings in year 2020 recorded at US $9.9 billion, while total imports to Sri Lanka registered at US $15.6 billion. Exports to India during the same period registered at US $604.5 million, and imports from India recorded at US $3,000.8 million. Although we anticipate a contraction in Sri Lanka's economic growth by 3.9% for 2020, as of the projections of the Sri Lanka Central Bank, with prevailing political stability that encourages more foreign investments and job creation, economic growth is expected to rebound in 2021 and maintain the upward curve. Further, positive sentiments fueled by the COVID-19 vaccination drive in the country and the impact of growth-promoting policies are expected to support the economic revival over the short to medium term. I wish to emphasize that under the post-pandemic economic revival program, the effort of Sri Lanka's government is to revive the industries such as agro and food processing, IT, health, renewable energy, manufacturing, domestic tourism, etc. at the earliest, and to attract much more investments in respect of those sectors. The commercial relations between Sri Lanka and India marked a historical milestone when the India-Sri Lanka Free Trade Agreement was signed in December 1998 that entered into force with effect from 1st March 2000. Further, Sri Lanka is one of the competitive business centers in the South Asian region, and there are compelling good reasons for investors to locate their business entities in Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is also well known among the members of the CII as a potential investment destination. It is my firm belief that the time is very opportune for the CII members to make use of the opportunities available to expand their business operations in Sri Lanka and enhance profitability under the new normal. From ancient times, Sri Lanka and India have enjoyed one of the warmest friendships between any two countries. It is my hope that we continue to strengthening this relationship as we jointly face the opportunities and challenges under post-pandemic era. According to the World Outlook report released by the IMF recently, it is projected that the Indian economy would grow by 11.5% in 2021 to 2022 and 6.8% in 2022 to 2023, as the economy gathers momentum after arrival of the vaccine and pickup in economic activity. For the next 2 years, India is projected to be the fastest growing major economy. With positive economic growth predictions on the Indian economy, I have no doubt that the digital platform organized by CII opens new opportunities for the members of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce who are looking for business partnership with India in the supply chain, technology transfer, and in the manufacturing process. This will significantly contribute to the economies of the two countries. I wish very fruitful deliberation at today's conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your very important remarks, and we look forward to engaging more with you in the months and years to come to take this forward. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now my pleasure and privilege to really welcome and invite and request Mr. Gopal Bagle, the Indian High Commissioner to Sri Lanka, to make his remarks, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Banerjee, Honorable Foreign Minister of Sri Lanka and senior statesman, my great colleague here and friend, if I may say so, Honorable Dinesh Gunawardena, Honorable Member of Parliament and India's Sherpa to G20 and G7, Suresh Prabhu, who has been one of the key proponents and a force behind closer relations between India and Sri Lanka in the economic sphere, most certainly, and who has been a prime mover and inspiration for today's event, I may say so. The Acting High Commissioner of Sri Lanka, Niluka Kadrugamova. Of course, the Director General of CII, the Secretary General of the Ceylon Chamber, Mr. Manjula De Silva, captains and representatives of business and industry from India and Sri Lanka. Very good morning to all of you, and namaskar, ayubovan, vanakkam. I am indeed very privileged, and I'm very honored to be joining this event today on a virtual platform. When I was in Delhi, we have been discussing how to overcome COVID's challenges, and today's event is another testimony to how the human spirit and the human endeavor overcome the challenges posed to the humankind from time to time. And I must compliment CII and the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce and all those who have come together in today's event, and also thank them for once again demonstrating the significance that the two countries and our leaderships attach to the India-Sri Lanka relationship and to fostering closer relations, including in the economic sphere. Today's event is yet another example of how both governments and our industries and business want to forge even closer ties for the greater mutual benefit to our people, for greater progress, prosperity, and peace. As I mentioned, the leadership level commitment is one of our biggest assets for stronger bilateral ties, closer bilateral ties. But I will speak very briefly from a practitioner's perspective. Practitioner because I happen to have the good fortune of being the High Commissioner of India to Sri Lanka at the moment. The existing ties in trade, investment, and development cooperation, they provide a very strong template for realizing our leadership's vision in the economic sphere. But what can we do in future? Of course, we all are aware of the challenges posed by COVID-19, but every challenge is also an opportunity. And given this strong and visionary leadership in India, given this strong and visionary leadership in Sri Lanka, obviously, the challenges have to turn to opportunities, have to turn into opportunities. And such an opportunity lies right ahead of us in terms of India-Sri Lanka economic relations. Our good friend Niluka ji just spoke about IMF's forecast and the strong trend of growth which is expected to be in the Indian economy. That certainly provides us a big opportunity to build more strength, more content in the India-Sri Lanka economic relationship. Sri Lanka's own economy has seen certain positives. Of course, there have been challenges for the entire world in terms of sectors such as tourism, export, and remittances from overseas. But these challenges can be overcome, and it is one of our tasks in the neighborhood, because India has neighborhood policy, and in that Sri Lanka occupies a very central and pivotal role. That when we start our economic recovery, when we move on the V-shaped curve to recovery, we take our friends and partners including those in our region along. And this is one of those reasons why India has been extending helping hand to all our friends and partners in the COVID situation in terms of medicinal supply and now with the vaccine. I'm particularly delighted to mention that in the month that India began its own vaccination on 16th January, I was very privileged to be along with the president of Sri Lanka, receiving the first consignment of vaccine which came to Sri Lanka on 29th January, on 28th January, and Sri Lanka could begin its vaccination the same month. What the presence of the Honorable President at the airport showed was not merely the leadership's commitment in Sri Lanka to the people, to the well-being, welfare of the people, but his commitment to India-Sri Lanka ties and the significance that the leadership of Sri Lanka and the leadership of India attach to the to better relations, to stronger relations between the two countries. Now, when we talk of the economic sphere, as I said, from a practitioner's point of view, the job of the governments is to provide an enabling environment. And it is the private sector which will have a key role in ensuring success and long-term sustainability of efforts for high growth in our individual countries and also high growth in our economic partnership. Indian companies and entities can play an important role in the development of manufacturing in Sri Lanka through investments, equipment, technology, know-how, and manpower training. There are a number of sectors which have been mentioned by Mr. Banerjee. He has been a close friend of Sri Lanka. He is very well aware of the strength of the Indian industry, obviously. And among them, pharmaceutical has been mentioned. I must say that this is a sector in which India has expertise, as the whole world realizes now, especially in the context of the COVID vaccine and other pharmaceutical supplies from India. But in terms of manufacturing also, there is certainly a vast scope given Sri Lanka's own focus on developing Sri Lanka not only as a production center for its own domestic requirements, but also for meeting some of the export requirements for the rest of the world. So pharmaceutical certainly provides a great sphere for us for in the manufacturing segment. Similarly, the implementation of large-scale economic projects, some of them have been under discussion between the two governments and two countries for some time. Their implementation in infrastructure and energy would also give a big boost to investor sentiment and promote win-win and mutually beneficial cooperation. What it will certainly do in the short term, obviously, is to get in much needed investment into Sri Lanka, and we look forward to some of these initiatives materializing in not too distant future. At the same time, I must also mention that the private sector requires conducive conditions for the success of its ventures, which include stable and predictable regulatory and economic policies and enabling business environment. We understand that some of the restrictions brought on the trade and import into Sri Lanka are temporary, as we have often been told. And at the same time, we do hope that in the medium to long term, the policy environment will make it more amenable for both sides to trade more and to benefit the business communities and the people, because when many of these imports, they actually go into fueling the economic activities in other sectors, and their prolonged absence can actually not be good for the economy in the longer term. So it is our earnest hope that the government of Sri Lanka will allow some of these restrictions on the imports to ease, which will result into more trade opportunities, and also our longer term investment prospects will also brighten up. Energy is another segment where we are very keen to develop closer partnership with Sri Lanka. And I must mention the renewable energy segment, which includes solar and wind in it. We are going to roll out very soon the US dollar 100 million credit line of credit for development of solar energy projects in Sri Lanka. And at the same time, we are also very closely very much interested in cooperating in biomass, waste to energy, and renewable energy projects in the wind segment. At the same time, let me also now turn to connectivity. I am right now joining all of you today from Jaffna. And while I am in Jaffna, I cannot but mention the need for more connectivity, both from sea and air. And in that context, the need for expeditious development of KKS Harbour, the ferry services resumption, and the resumption of the air links between Chennai and Jaffna, and development of the Palale airport. These are some of the things which are obviously high priority for both sides. And I must mention that over the course of last 2 days that I have been here, a number of interlocutors from the business and industry segment, as well as the high functionaries of the government here, both at the provincial level and others, they have mentioned to me the significance of promoting greater connectivity for trade and also tourism. We are in discussion with the government of Sri Lanka to start a travel bubble, and we hope that with that, more people will start visiting, overcoming the COVID-19 restrictions. I would now finally like to turn very briefly to the initiatives and just mention one or two of them, just to show that for the government of India, how initiatives such as production linked incentives over the next 5 years in 13 sectors, which totally amount to US $27 billion, or the high growth rate trajectory of India, or the push for Atmanirbhar Bharat, they are opportunities for investment from outside also. And I mention this in the full knowledge that it is not only India which has been investing in Sri Lanka, but also Sri Lanka which has been investing in India. There are a number of sectors, garment being among them, and we would welcome more Sri Lankan participation of investors in India also. In brief, I would like to sum up by saying that we are looking to forge closer economic ties across the world, and especially with countries which are in our neighborhood, our friends and traditional partners like Sri Lanka. And it has been my privilege to, to be in very close discussions and take some of these projects and initiatives towards fruition. The government of India will, of course, be happy to support initiatives by the Sri Lankan private sector and the Indian private sector that seek to broaden the economic engagement between India and Sri Lanka. A number of other sectors, of course, have been mentioned, like digital economy and all that. I won't like to take your time on that, but I would hope that the discussions among the panelists today will give us very specific ideas and suggestions for promoting our strong economic ties and taking them to higher levels, building more content, creating more exchanges at the level of business and industry, and of course, first and foremost, promoting greater connectivity between our two nations and peoples. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Bagle. It's always such a great pleasure and I must say very enlightening always to hear Mr. Gopal Bagle. And he is a person with deep insights, and he's today spoken about the opportunities really on the ground. And over the years, whenever one listens to him, whenever I have spent time with him or listened to him, and he has articulated his articulation has always been something which is very practically possible to be practically implemented. That's the way I would like to put it. And thank you very much for those insights. And thanks for also bringing out some of those critical areas. I mean, you underlined some amongst the number of sectors that you talked about. You underlined a few, like the pharma and the renewable sector. And of course, the entire issue of connect. We look forward to the travel bubble. Mr. Bagle, you also mentioned about PLI, something that we are extremely involved in from the CII, and Atmanirbhar Bharat, which we are looking forward to something which will really help India, such a great place in terms of doing business. And the person who actually leads the PLI work on behalf of CII and Atmanirbhar Bharat on behalf of CII, I can see him on the screen, Dr. Pawan Goenka of the Mahindras, and he has been steering the industry work on this. It's great to see him also in this discussion session. With that, ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor and privilege really to welcome such a senior statesman, a senior minister, Mr. Dinesh Gunawardene, for being present here. Thank you very much, sir, for being here with us. We are indeed delighted to see you on the screen. Before I come to Mr. Dinesh Gunawardene, I would turn to Mr. Suresh Prabhu. As I had mentioned, and we all know, he is the Sherpa of India's Sherpa to G20 and G7. Again, a man of great ideas. He has led so many vast areas, vast number of areas, from environment to climate to railways to industry, you name it, and he has given leadership to that. A man with phenomenal passion for whatever work that he does and ideas that he gives. I call him an ideas man at times, and because whenever I talk to him, he gives me at least 7, 10 ideas on many things that can be done. And today's conference is again, as Mr. Gopal Bagle mentioned, is his idea, and he said that make use of this challenge times of pandemic, convert that into an opportunity. So here we are with Mr. Suresh Prabhu. Welcome to you, sir, and over to you for your address and remarks, please.
Honorable Suresh Prabhu, Member of Parliament, India Sherpa for G20 and G7, Excellency Gopal Bage, High Commissioner of India to Sri Lanka, Neluka Kadragama, Acting High Commissioner of Sri Lanka and Delhi, Mr. Chandrajit Banerjee, Director General of Confederation of Indian Industry, Mr. Manjula De Silva, CEO, Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Ramesh David, President of the Indo-Lanka Chamber of Commerce and Industry, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed a great pleasure for me to join you today at this virtual conference on enhancing Indo-Lanka economic relations. I take this opportunity to convey my deep appreciation to the Confederation of Indian Industry and the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, as well as the Indo-Lanka Chamber of Commerce and Industry fresh initiative. Despite the challenges posed by COVID-19 pandemic, the commitment both individually and collectively amply demonstrates a vital conduit for prosperity. Especially thankful for immediate priority given in repatriation of nearly thousands of Sri Lankan pilgrims from various Buddhist sites in India. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa and government highly appreciates, and I recall this as a special gesture. This is an important component of India's neighborhood first policy. I must take this opportunity to thank Government of India for that assistance for 500,000 doses of the COVID Shield vaccine to Sri Lanka in January, and assisted in commercial procurement of additional doses from Serum Institute of India. Hopefully, both our countries will resume normalcy with reinvigorated energy and determination. As mentioned by the High Commissioner, I once again recall and I would convey our sincere appreciation through you to the Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi. As some have said, it may well define the destiny of the planet in the 21st century. Interactions such as this forum provides us with a valuable platform to pursue these goals. Since the outbreak of COVID pandemic in the first quarter last year, our business communities have been major victims of its negative impact. Our country is braced through for lockdowns. and curfews in an effort to contain the spread of the virus. The ocean around us is the world's third largest. It commands 60% of the world's GDP, sees 80% of the world's shipborne energy transport through its oceans, and facilitates 46% of the world's merchandise trade, 55% of the world's container traffic fly through our oceans. These unprecedented precautions taken by individual states brought a slowdown to human movement, production and services, the major contributors in our national economies, such as tourism and foreign remittances, were disrupted. Macroeconomic instability in our economies brought risk of poverty. In such backdrop, I'm thankful for your optimism for the private sector to resume economic activity. Your trade and industry chambers together bring a ray of hope for the resurrection and resumption of economic rebound for the region and millions of people. Ladies and gentlemen, India and Sri Lanka remain tightly knitted neighbors of manifold trade economic activities. Our close geographic proximity provides ample opportunities and mutual complementaries. From the side of our immediate neighbor India, for the past few years, under the leadership of His Excellency Prime Minister Narendra Modi, the neighborhood first foreign policy became a pivotal factor in our bilateral relations. Of course, we in Sri Lanka reciprocated since our government came to power in November 2019 under the leadership of His Excellency the President Gotabaya Rajapaksa by deepening our close relations with India. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa and myself as the Foreign Minister paid our first official visits to India. Our two countries enjoy deep understanding of one another. Both our countries are committed towards forging closer relations with deep mutual respect. In his policy document, Vistas of Prosperity and Splendor, His Excellency President Rajapaksa outlined a neutral foreign policy with priority for regional cooperation and non-alignment. We continue to promote this policy bilaterally as well as through groupings such as SAARC, BIMSTEC, and IORA. Overexploitation of natural resources, pollution, threats of chemicals, acidification, sea level rise are also among our concerns. India-Sri Lanka relations have millennia-old recorded history. Our cultural exchanges, religious affinities, and linguistic bonds are inseparable, bound by multi-layered exchanges and people-to-people contacts. Such linkages provide a stable foundation to enhance robust economic activities. Few weeks after the enlightenment of Gautama the Buddha, 26 centuries ago, Tapassu and Baluka became the first two followers of the Buddha. They were successful merchants traveling in India. In fact, when relics of the Buddha were gifted to them, they traveled to the northeastern port of Trincomalee, and having deposited the sacred relics, they then built Giri Handusaya, which today is worshipped by Buddhists and all other pilgrims coming from different parts of the world. As it is from history, Sri Lanka sees the importance of maintaining freedom, openness in navigation in our seas and the sea lanes. In an era of Asia resurgence, our two economies are poised to benefit from each other. The direct business sector linkages function as a valuable, conducive growth, flourish mutual economic benefits. Ladies and gentlemen, we have no barriers between India and Sri Lanka politically, culturally, or economically for such close involvement through the respective private sectors. Let me take the example of last year's inauguration by HCL Technologies of India, its first global development center in Sri Lanka. India indeed is the third largest investor in Sri Lanka. We have Indo-Sri Lanka Free Trade Agreement in place that provides ample opportunities to do business. I request the Indian investors to widen the export-oriented manufacturing in Sri Lanka that would enable our integration into regional supply chains. Distinguished friends, our economy has great potential, especially in the new green-blue economic policies. One such area is the untapped renewable power generation in the ocean waters. 2 seasons of monsoon winds certainly guarantee an immense potential. We must harness and secure these environmentally friendly modes for our regional growth as well as in a climate friendly manner. We in Sri Lanka expect interest from Indian business community to bring FDI. As mentioned earlier in pharmaceutical, textiles, which are India's core businesses, there is also potential automobile, light engineering, ICT, hospitality, tourism, agriculture, food processing, and construction sectors, etc. I'm pleased that the Board of Investment of Sri Lanka works closely with the Indian CEO Forum in crafting our outreach program to attract FDI into Sri Lanka through parent company network and the Indian business leaders operating in Sri Lanka. Sri Lankans also have made an entry to the investment areas in many of the founding steps they have taken. Steps taken by your government to bring all farmers onto a single digital platform and then remit financial assistance to them via digital banking is highly remarkable and revolutionary step under the leadership of the Prime Minister. Future potential of our region's technological growth is absolutely promising. The present success in the IT sector is a very good indicator, as this means a much more greater amount of exchange in data back and forth. Every single bit of data that travels through physical lines underwater and in the air above our ocean, in economic sense, this can easily generate a new economy with great source of revenue similar to sea. Let me extend my compliments to the major Indian investors already in local operations such as Bharati Airtel, Lanka IOC, Welcome Hotels, AIA Holdings, Krish Transworks, Tata, Taj Hotels, Ultratech Cement, Ambuja, Cement, Shep, Piramal Glass, Ashok Leyland, and other joint ventures. Based on your experiences in Sri Lanka, I invite you to convince your peers to consider Sri Lanka as their next destination. There are considerable Sri Lankan investments in India as well as Brandix, Mass Holdings, Damro Furniture, LTL Holdings, DRH Logistics, and Freight Links International, etc. I'm delighted that CEOs of these business magnates are scheduled to share their experiences at this conference today. Ladies and gentlemen, I firmly believe that in addition to large-scale business, Sri Lanka's economic relations must focus more on people-to-people contact. India accounted for the largest tourist arrivals in Sri Lanka in 2018 with 424,887 visitors. In November 2020, the number of tourist arrivals has recorded as 89,000 in the COVID-19 situation. We are currently exploring the possibility to introduce an air bubble between the two countries to resume tourism and business in other sectors. Excellency Prime Minister Narendra Modi, during his summit call with the Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa in September last year, announced $15 million bilateral support for the Buddhist pilgrim development. Furthermore, in Ramayana Trail, announced by India, has great potential for further expansion. I encourage the business sector to actively participate in these efforts. Once you commence business, our dreams to achieve prosperity become a reality. Sri Lanka's Chamber of Commerce and affiliated bodies also take a special initiative in the post-COVID development era that we are facing today. Government's assistance support will be extended to our private sector also to engage, to increase their participation with the Indian industry, commerce, trade and investment. Before I conclude, let me also recall meeting Honorable Suresh Prabhu many times at the international forums that I have traveled to. The ideas, the innovative ways that he approaches problems, I would like to recall. This should also take our conference to a new area, as Mr. Chatterjee Energy mentioned. Let me conclude my remarks by wishing you a very productive engagement digital conference. I hope this direct dialogue between the private sector of India and Sri Lanka would pave the way to forge closer economic relations towards achieving the unexplored potential that exists between our two countries. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Honorable Mr. Dinesh Gunawardanaji. Very, very profound inputs and most valuable. Really talked about the strong linkages over the years, built over so many years, and the bonds that have been over there over the centuries. We look forward to working under your leadership on taking this huge opportunity forward. With that, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure and privilege now to welcome and invite and request Mr. Suresh Prabhu, Member of Parliament and India's Sherpa for G20 and G7, to give his remarks and address, please. Mr. Prabhu, please.
So good morning. Good morning, friends, or rather good afternoon. And I welcome His Excellency, the Foreign Minister of Sri Lanka, a great friend of India. Probably he's a friend of all the masses of Sri Lanka, or he's a friend of all those who need help at any time. So I welcome His Excellency Dinesh Gunawardene for this very important program and making this very comprehensive remarks as to how the relationship and also what is the way forward for these two countries to work together. I'm very happy that this program is attended by many distinguished people. Our High Commissioner, who is present here, has been specially sent by our Prime Minister to Sri Lanka, knowing how close the relationship and how important the relationship is for India. He has worked with the Prime Minister for many years, and the signal that Prime Minister sent that we want to send our best diplomat to Sri Lanka so that we can forge the relationship even better and deeper as we go along. So I'm very happy that he's present here. Your Acting High Commissioner of Sri Lanka in India is here, who is actually doing a real good job in his disposition, and we are waiting for the High Commissioner to come to Sri Lanka, who is again very senior leader from Sri Lanka, and we welcome him. There are two distinguished institutions, one CII and the other Ceylon Chamber of Commerce. One's represented by Mr. Banerjee, one by Mr. De Silva are here. That shows that we want to deepen this relationship in economic sphere through private sector participation. I attended Mr. De Silva's program just before Corona came in, and I was there for the annual meeting. And now I know that how important Ceylon Chamber of Commerce is in Sri Lanka as the CIA is in India. So I think we'll try to bring together both these and work together. I remember, and when I was talking about Mr. Dinesh Gunawardene, his father was a great freedom fighter. But he didn't fight for freedom only of Sri Lanka. He fought for freedom of not only Sri Lanka, but for India. He worked with Indian freedom fighters, and they together wanted to drive away the colonials. But what is the purpose of doing that? Was to emancipate the poor people of both the countries, to bring equity in both the countries, to make sure that economic development happens after political power is seized by our own people. And now this is the time to realize the dreams of his great father, Philip Gunawardene, to make sure that we work on that vision as well of economic development of both the countries in a manner that will actually satisfy the people of both the countries and bring in a comprehensive development in this country. This is also happening at a time when there is a huge mandate the leadership of Sri Lanka and leadership of India enjoy. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has won 2 successive terms with bigger mandates, and he continues to be the most popular leader of India, and he wants to make sure that that popularity, that mandate he has, wants to use it for development of the country and development of society. Same thing in Sri Lanka, and I congratulate the government of Sri Lanka led by the Prime Minister, who won a massive mandate and has come back to power to make sure that how to make Sri Lanka as a hub of new development. At that time, let's think about strategies as to how we can grow together, how we can develop together, how can we complement each other's development. And to do that, talking first about Sri Lanka, India being little bigger country and has aspiration to be a $5 trillion economy. When we'll become $5 trillion economy, and that's a matter of time, we want Sri Lanka also to benefit from it. We want that we should try to make the development possible, which will benefit our neighbors, particularly Sri Lanka. And to do that, the strategy has to put in place, and therefore I think CI as well as Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, along with the 2 high commissioners, can work out a strategy which can then be implemented by private sector as well as by the governments. The governments could be facilitator, but private sector could be the leader. They can actually work in a way that will make sure that people will benefit by private sector investment. Sri Lanka could be a destination for investment by India in a very big way, particularly after post-pandemic, in which countries are struggling to find out new models of economic growth. And investments coming from outside will boost domestic economies in a very significant way. So India would like to ensure that we make the investment in a way that Sri Lanka benefits first. That's a basic criteria. And to do that, we have to find out, identify sectors. First rule for that would be that Sri Lanka must benefit. And second would be that Sri Lanka must remain clean and green for all times to come. Because Sri Lanka is preferred destination for tourists because it's so beautiful, including me. I've been to Sri Lanka many, many times, and I look forward to coming there as soon as possible. As soon as the restrictions are lifted, I will be there, probably the first visitor to come to Sri Lanka to enjoy the beauty of the country. So second rule would be obviously how to keep Sri Lanka clean and green. It should not be in any other way. And therefore, some of the sectors that the discussion has happened before me is that we'll try to focus on those sectors which is clean and green, infrastructure development, logistic, and all of that. And therefore, we like to work in a way that will really benefit. We also seen that Sri Lanka has population which should be a envy to anybody. The human development indices of Sri Lanka are not only best in South Asia, but probably one of the better ones as compared to other countries in the world. And therefore, to draw on that, as we had discussed even with Honorable Minister earlier, because he always has the interest of the masses at his heart, how can India also partner with Sri Lanka for skill development, for creating more jobs, and leveraging this already existing huge human resource to the benefit of the society. So we like to definitely work on that. We like to develop joint tourism projects so that people coming from Europe or any other part of the world visit South Asia and then visit Sri Lanka as well as India, so both the countries can benefit. The tourist also will be happy that in one visit he's getting more opportunities. So we like to definitely work on that. Creating employment through investment is something which will be India's priority. We'll definitely find out projects in which investment coming from India will create local jobs in Sri Lanka, as well as over a period of time a sustainable ecosystem in Sri Lanka which can ensure Sri Lanka to propel into a higher growth trajectory. And that is what we should try to do, and we'll definitely work on that. We also have many ideas in which Mr. CB mentioned about education, healthcare. I would suggest to you, Excellency, the Honorable Minister, that we can set up a high-end economic zones into Sri Lanka. Whether, as our High Commissioner Dr. Bagle mentioned, either in energy or in education or healthcare sector. Just imagine the new focus of the world is healthcare. So if you can have an integrated healthcare sector, it will be traditional as well as modern medicine, the not only pharmaceuticals, but also the equipment makers, the medical equipment that are necessary now becoming part of the ecosystem of healthcare, and digital infrastructure for delivering the healthcare system. If you can set it up, Honorable Minister, I can tell you, it will attract medical tourism also, besides investment into that sector. And that can create jobs of a magnitude that cannot be even imagined. And people will come there as a tourist, but also enjoy the medical facilities. And that can be another very important area of development that can really happen. So we can work with you, set up the special zones so that Sri Lanka can benefit, India investment can come, and together the growth will actually happen. As you know, India will be hosting G20 and will be heading towards it in the next end of next year. It's the first time not only India would be hosting the biggest event, but South Asia will be holding and hosting the biggest event ever. So Sri Lanka and India will be up very close to you. And India always maintains, our Prime Minister always mentioned this, that India represents not just the G20 countries when they will host it, or when we participate in G20 proceeding, we just don't speak for India alone, but we speak for those countries who are not in the room. Those countries who also have some concerns of the global nature, we represent them. So we'll be representing even Sri Lanka in that forum to ensure that a global community focuses on such issues which are so relevant to developing countries and for members of our community in Sri Lanka. So we look forward to, when I say community, I mean the South Asian community. I mean the community like our Sri Lankan friends, and we like to work on that. I would like to also give a suggestion that while the G2G contacts are always there, and in fact, this is one relationship which is not driven by head alone. This is a relationship which is driven by heart also, because we feel that Sri Lanka is not just a neighbor, but much, much more than that. It's a civilizational relationship. And therefore, you can see the comprehensive nature of it. It's political, it's cultural, it is social, it is scientific. But I feel now we should also try to develop it in a way that will work for benefit of Sri Lanka and India at the same time, but more importantly for Sri Lanka. Any investment going into Sri Lanka must essentially bring in higher economic growth for the country. So we'll really work with you. And I can clearly see that we are very fortunate that a foreign minister of Sri Lanka is looking at his relationship from a completely different perspective of bringing in growth in a way that will not just be economic growth, social development, but also bringing culture and civilization together. So we really would like to dwell upon that, develop upon that, and look forward to working with you. So your presence, Your Excellency, Mr. Gunawardene, is also demonstrative of the fact that how much importance you attach to the relationship. We really look forward to your visit, as well as, of course, as I said, I will be coming and calling on you, meeting you, as well as my other friends in Sri Lanka. I have many of them, and I really look forward to going there as soon as possible. So let me thank both CI, the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, and also, of course, both the High Commissioner, and importantly, the most highlight of this program is the distinguished presence of the Minister. So, Minister, I would just make a suggestion that while we develop this relationship, as I said, comprehensively, we must bring the members of Parliament together, and therefore I can suggest we could have soon an online program with members of Parliament from Sri Lanka, members of Parliament from India, and we have a very big CIHM council in which more than 200 members of Parliament participate from all parties. I chair it. So I'll invite my friend from Sri Lanka to join in this dialogue so that we open one more avenue. As I said, it's very comprehensive of all kinds, but maybe one more avenue for deepening this relationship. And I really look forward to doing that. We have very active high commissioners on both the sides taking this forward, and a leadership of the Honorable Minister, which will actually help us to take forward. As I said, our Prime Minister has always said many times that including scientific development must benefit our neighbors like Sri Lanka. So we really look forward to working with you. The small token of friendship was sending the vaccines to Sri Lanka because we feel that Sri Lankans are very important for us. So not only our health, but our Sri Lankan friends' health is as important as our own citizens. And therefore, I am sure we'll be secure, we'll be more healthier, we'll be more prosperous, we'll be more peaceful. And to do that, India will like to play a very positive, constructive role with our friends in Sri Lanka. So let me offer my best wishes. Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, for being here. I really look forward to working with all of you. Thank you very much. Let me offer my best wishes to each one of you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prabhu. Thanks for that wonderful idea. As you concluded, talking about the honourable members of parliaments getting together, we hope to taking that forward. You always come up with something which is out of the box, and we will try and make that happen. And really, we are all of us today much enriched after this opening session of this very important conference on enhancing India-Sri Lanka economic relations. We are enriched with the advice of the directions given by His Excellency Mr. Dinesh Gunawardene, the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Government of Sri Lanka. Thank you very much, sir, for your enlightening words and for really giving us such a great vision of taking this forward. Mr. Suresh Prabhu, as always, thank you very much for your concept of making this program happen, for the ideas that you have given today, for the sectors that you touched upon, the people-to-people connect, and also, as you said, the connects of our parliamentarians. We really look forward to taking all these ideas given by our honorable two leaders so very eloquently, and it gives us a great agenda for the Ceylon Chamber and CII to work upon as we move along. We hope to really exchange physical delegations in the months and years to come very soon. We would like our leaders to take these industrial delegations to each other's countries, and we would like that to happen physically. While Mr. Gopal Bagle sort of alluded to that geography is history by saying that he is participating from Jaffna into this digital conference. So while geography might have become a bit of history in the context of today's time, we would still like to meet each other, and we would like to really take forward the very, very valuable inputs given by the two high commissions, a high commissioner and the acting high commissioner. Thank you very much for your participation and for giving this relationship such a very strong boost as we take it forward. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and we will now continue with the other session. This next session is a panel discussion on enhancing India-Sri Lanka trade and investments. Thank you, Honorable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Suresh Prabhu. Thanks for making this happen.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Ladies
Reena.
and gentlemen, we will now continue with the next session, the
Reena.
session on enhancing India-Sri Lanka trade and investments. Moderating the session is Mr. Romesh David, President, Indo-Lanka Chamber of Commerce and Industry. May I request Mr. Romesh David to kindly moderate the session and take it forward. Over to you, Mr. David.
Thank you, ma'am. And good afternoon to everybody from Colombo. And I'd like to welcome all our listeners, and particularly, I think we still have with us the Honorable Suresh Prabhu. Welcome, sir. It was great to see you again. We have met you both in India and on your many visits to Colombo. And I think your wise words were greatly valued. I think we have, how are we for time? Do we still close at 12:30, or do we have a little bit more time?
We can close maybe a little later also, 12:40 something.
12:40.
So everybody is okay with it?
All right, thank you. So without too much ado, I think enhancing India-Sri Lanka trade and investment is what is before our panel today. We have a very eminent and a very knowledgeable panel that are extremely well represented across a fairly diverse range of industries, across energy, across apparels, technology, and pharmaceuticals, and representing both businesses in Sri Lanka, Indian businesses in Sri Lanka, and Sri Lankan businesses in India. So what I'd like to do is ask each of our panelists, as I introduce them, to maybe present, briefly make some introductory remarks, and then we'll go into some specifics thereafter. And if I can start with HCL Technologies, we have Srimati Shivashankar, who is the Corporate Vice President and the Program Director for New Vistas at HCL Technologies. She has extensive experience of over 2 decades in business and human capital strategy. She has headed and primed global transformation initiatives at HCL. She was also the key architect of the HCL Foundation and HCL Grant Initiative. Srimati holds a bachelor's degree in computer science from NIT Tiruchirappalli and an MBA in international business from Ohio. Srimati, we can start the session off with your presentation by HCL Technologies from you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. And I think it's really an honor to be amidst all the distinguished speakers today. I must confess that I walked into Sri Lanka a couple of years ago, Ramesh, for the first time to discover what is the country there to offer from the talent pool, from the IT perspective. And HCL has taken the bold step to go for an accelerated expansion plan into Sri Lanka. Amidst all these pandemic times, one thing that was certain was about HCL's vision for Sri Lanka. Thanks to the support from the Indian High Commission as well as from the Sri Lankan government, especially from the Board of Investment of Sri Lanka and the other ministries related to setting up our office site in Sri Lanka, we were able to go live. We were able to launch our site in Colombo in September 2020. So when the world was wondering what would happen to the economic aspects of countries, whether the jobs will be created during the pandemic times, I think when there were a lot of uncertainties, I think HCL, we are very, very happy to state that we were able to reach our milestones on time. There were no delays. We said September we will go live, and we did. Now, as we speak, we already have 500 employees in HCL Sri Lanka, and we are poised to grow and add a few thousands in the coming years, as committed to the Sri Lankan government. In fact, Mr. Bagle was also kind enough to be there during the launch of our, during the inauguration of our go live operations. And most importantly, Honorable Prime Minister of Sri Lanka took time to come and address the HCL leadership and mark the inaugural session as well. Having said this, there were certain points which got touched base today, and I thought I will just also elaborate, which many ministers, the honorable ministers spoke as well. We know that Sri Lanka has rich talent. It's the very young, bright minds are there. We need to skill and we need to deploy them in global projects. So we have taken a big mission on skilling, and we will be investing a lot in the local talent. And we are not only looking at graduate program, but we are bringing with us the HCL Tech B program, which is very unique and probably a path-breaking initiative from HCL Technologies. We will be looking at both O-level and A-level completed students in Sri Lanka. We will be skilling them for IT jobs. When I say this would be IT and tech engineers job, from software coding to becoming an analytics person. And we will also help them to pursue their work integrated higher education. So we are looking at a model of where there will be early starters in Lanka, so that we are aligned with the overall Sri Lankan vision of or moving into the knowledge-based sector in the coming years. Our collective wisdom over the last 3 decades in IT industry, especially companies like HCL, we have have the right capabilities to identify the talent which can be groomed for global jobs. In my experience of Sri Lanka, the way I have been seeing this and witnessing it on the ground over the past 1 year or so, as I was continued to build the location, I think there are very, very bright minds there to nurture and to be put into some transformational IT projects. And that is something that HCL is certainly committed to. I sincerely hope that the international gates open as the vaccination drives have started in both countries. Even amidst this COVID times, Ramesh, you must be happy to know that there are quite a few expats who are experts in the various IT fields have relocated to Sri Lanka. They have relocated to Colombo. And because of their own commitment to grow HCL as well as to groom the young leaders in Sri Lanka. So I think this first step that HCL has taken, to walk across what I would call as barriers created because of pandemic and not because of anything else, to walk that extra mile and for the employees from both the countries to shake hands and to make it happen. I think I'm very, very grateful to my team to show that amidst all whatever could be the barriers, we can always, come up with a very interesting strategy, and it's nothing but the people who are leading from the front to turn around and manage the business goals as well as manage their own personal career paths. So I'm very grateful to the government, to the Board of Investment Sri Lanka, as well as the High Commission, who's been helping us to work around the visa regulations, working around the travel during this time, and ensuring that my Fortune 500 customers who amidst this pandemic times have said, doesn't matter where you operate, India or Sri Lanka. Yes, Sri Lanka is a great place. Go ahead and set operations. So our own customers' faith on moving into new locations have been much restored because of the multi-stakeholders coming together and making it happen. I see and we see from HCL that Sri Lanka is a bright place to expand. And we are in the discovery stage. And as I discover, I'm sure I'm only going to hit more gold mine. And I know that there are many, many possibilities beyond just the skilling and delivering our services from there. I'm sure there are much more possibilities for HCL to work around the economic growth of the country as well. So with that note, thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Srimati, and what a wonderful example and story of really transcending global issues in the form of the pandemic and starting business and meaningful business during this time. I think we'll come back to you in a while, but as our next panelist, we have Suchira Surendranath, who's from the Brandix Group, and as an Sri Lankan investor in India, Suchira has over 20 years of experience spanning multiple industries and geographies, having worked in the UK, Pakistan, Hong Kong, and Sri Lanka, among others. He has held leadership positions in IT, marketing, and finance across FMCG and apparel, and is currently the corporate CFO of the Brandix Group, Sri Lanka's largest garment exporter. He's a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants and holds an MBA from the University of Wales, among several other academic and professional qualifications. So if we could have Suchira now tell us a little bit about the experience of Brandix in groundbreaking investment from Sri Lanka into India. Thank you.
Thank you, Ramesh. Brandix, just an introduction to Brandix. Brandix is a Sri Lanka-based global apparel manufacturer that provides inspired apparel solutions to some of the best-known high street fashion labels around the world. We have been a long-standing beneficiary of India-Sri Lanka economic relations. We established Brandix India Apparel City, a 1,000-acre apparel park in Visakhapatnam in year 2007. It was a greenfield venture, and since then we were able to grow this into an integrated apparel and textile park that today generates more than $350 million in annual revenue. It's an export-oriented park as it stands, and we have recruited and trained more than 65,000 individuals from Vizag to date. We have an integrated supply chain within the park, from knitting to dyeing of fabric, lace, elastics, to cut and sew of garments, sitting alongside suppliers of ribbons, labels, cartons, and embellishment. That creates an ecosystem that delivers speed, quality, and scalability that leads to a really strong competitive advantage. The park provides plug-and-play infrastructure. We have central water and effluent treatment facilities that can treat up to 60 million liters of effluent per day. We have a 200 megawatt power substation connected to the grid, and we have staging units that help new tenants come in and hit the ground running immediately. So that's how the park delivers, and through that park, over time, we were able to attract both customers from the west as well as the east. The park brings together the best in both countries. So the expertise in product development and innovation that we brought about from Sri Lanka, and the customer base and the relationships along with the supply chain capability and scalability in India that really led to that sustainable value proposition. We see immense potential for growth as a region in the years to come, especially considering the global shift in trade that's happening today. So I'm happy to share more about our experiences and answer any of the questions that you may have as the session progresses. Thank you very much. Over to you, Ramesh.
Thank you, Sushila. Can we go next to Lanka IOC, which is one of the flagship Indian investment in Sri Lanka, and we have with us Manoj Gupta, who's managing director of Lanka IOC, and has been here since 2019. He has been with IOC since 1993, working in various divisions across aviation operations, retail, and consumer sales. Has been a core member of IOC's prestigious retail transformation program, Dhruva. He is a civil engineering grad from NIT Jaipur and has an MBA from the Poda Institute of Management in Jaipur. Manoj, if we can have you share your insights with us, please. Thank you.
Wow, sir, thank you so very much for the brilliant opportunity. Trust me, we are blessed today. We are privileged, in fact, having such, or rather listening to such wonderful people out over here. I've been here for the last 2 years, but to tell you something about Lanka IOC, sir, like we are here since last 2002, and we are the only private listed company in the energy field out over here. Like we are spread all across the length and breadth of the country. We have a annual turnover of close to about 100 billion. Our investment is almost close to about 100 million US dollars out over here. In fact, like we are primarily into selling off all the energy products, like just like to name a few. We sell petrol, we sell diesel, we sell branded fuels that we call as extra premium, extra mile. We have a market share of close to about 25% in the country. And we have a monthly turnover in terms of quantity of almost about 60,000 tons of fuels, right? And not only auto fuels, we are in a big way into bunkering activities. We are in a big way into bitumen segment, into lubricants, and we are just we are not far away from commissioning another grease plant over here. That's going to be the first of its own kind. The indigenous grease plant shall be coming up hopefully by the end of April at Trincomalee Terminal. And with the commissioning of that particular grease plant, the best thing to happen is all the grease requirement in our country, Sri Lanka, right now is met by imports. So we are very confident with that. Like all our country's requirement is going to be met locally. That's going to be a big saving on our foreign exchange. So it's like this. We have a direct employee strength of direct as well as indirect employee strength of 5,000 numbers. And we are in a big way trying to expand our footprints out over here. Like in the sense, like we are commissioning almost about 10 dealerships and distributorships every annum. We have a strength of almost 35 lube distributors, which are selling across every corner, like the Servo brand of lubricants, which is which is an Indian oil brand of lubricants. But since we have a lube blending plant out over here, all this production is done locally out over here. So we are very proud. We are very privileged out over here. And now since November 2019. Since the taking over of the Honorable President, the taking over of the Honorable Prime Minister and the new Energy Minister, Uday Gamapilla, having taken over the charge of the energy portfolio, there's absolutely complete dynamism which has stepped into the field of energy. And we've started talking in a big way, like about production of biofuels, about carrying out of solarization, bringing about solarization in a big way. Just to share with you, like already 30 of our sheds means these petrol pumps, 30 of our sheds have been solarized. That means they are harnessing the solar energy to an extent of it has started giving us a revenue of almost close to about 1.5 million on a monthly basis. So there's a long way to go. Like we look forward, for carrying out the complete solarization of all the sheds. Automation, technology is what we have brought into our sheds. Like 31, in fact, precisely, sheds have got automated. So one good thing which has happened with our coming over here is also it has brought about a complete change in the landscape of the petroleum sector. Like I feel so happy, so privileged looking at CPC sheds now. All the CPC sheds now, they have the best of, to a great extent, a good infrastructure facilities, the driveways, the canopies, the best of the dispensing units and all. So having come over here, like we started off, like there were some teething issues and all, but with the tremendous brilliant support of all the institutions that we coordinate with, like we have a firm footing today, and we have very, very high hopes and aspirations that we would further be doing exceptionally well in the times to come, sir.
Thank you, Manoj. And we'll go quickly to our last panelist, but certainly not least. We have Adil Hassan from Glenmark Pharmaceuticals. Adil is Sri Lanka country manager for Glenmark Pharmaceuticals and has been in Colombo for almost 6 years now, since 2015. He was previously head of marketing and strategy, Asia Pacific for Glenmark, based out of Mumbai. He has over 17 years of experience in the pharmaceutical industry. And Adil, we'd like to hear about your experience and with Glenmark in Sri Lanka.
Thank you, Ramesh. Good afternoon, everyone. And I see across today's program as being a very exciting platform where we got eminent personalities which added a lot of value, and the presence of various industry heads giving out a strong message about the seriousness towards India-Sri Lanka trade bilateral ties. Now, in today's discussion, what we see is pharmaceuticals came out as clearly as a priority sector, and by the government of Sri Lanka, the setting up of the special economic zone, especially for pharmaceuticals, saying about how much importance the government of Sri Lanka gives to healthcare as a sector. We at Glenmark have been in Sri Lanka way back from 1990, and Sri Lanka was the first country where Glenmark initiated its international presence. Now, coming to the ties, bilateral ties in terms of pharmaceuticals, India has traditionally been a preferred partner, and this is basically because India brings quality medicines at a competitive price. And today, Indian companies are the largest supplier to SPC Sri Lanka for all the global and private market tenders. And we too have been supplying across to SPC way back from 1990, and come out to be one of the preferred ones who deliver in terms of the quality standards. Sri Lanka as such has become the 6th largest partner when it comes to pharmaceutical exports from India. And today in Sri Lanka, 800 plus molecules or combinations are getting supplied. Now, in 2020, along with COVID-19, came across a major concern, and that was the supply of medicines. And we had strived very hard, especially despite having many of the manufacturing units coming under lockdown areas, and we ensured that there was no shortage of essential medicines. Now, coming to traditionally Sri Lanka has been importing medicines at least to the 90% of the requirement. When it comes to the local manufacturing capabilities, what I see is there's a huge scope for collaboration over various aspects of manufacturing support, as well as even skill development to improve the local, employment opportunities. And this is what I see across as a future in the next few years, when some amount of a self-reliance in Sri Lanka would be coming across. And this even has been, stated by His Excellency President Gotabaya, that we should come out of, complete reliance on imports and move into some amount of, local manufacturing. So what I see across is maybe 2025 is first, landmark which has been put across, that maybe 30% of the import substitution will happen. But I don't just see across that only, we should look at from the angle of supporting the local requirement, but also the preparation for exports also should be there. And there a huge scope lies across in terms of having bilateral cooperation. And that's basically from not only helping out the local manufacturers in terms of the technical support, but also from the angle of API supplies and even the capability building. I think I won't take much more time. Thank you, Ramesh. That's it from my side.
Thank you, Adil. And I think we have time for a very quick round of our panelists again. And if I can go back to Srimati, I think you've come into an industry that has long been you've come into bolster an industry that has been a national aspiration of Sri Lanka in terms of becoming a knowledge hub. And from what you said earlier, with 500 employees in the last 4 or 5 months, that's really starting off with a bang. But a big part of this session would be really to impart to other Indian investors and other companies looking at Sri Lanka as to what your experiences were and what, if anything, you would have as advice to those companies coming in and setting up here, and what would you suggest, Srimati, in terms of businesses?
Sure. IT has always thrived with the supply of the right kind of people at the right time, right? Because and also the business demands, especially from the customers, when they decide to kind of take this and outsource to any large players like ours, they do look for some bright minds. So what was actually missing, or what is missing in Lanka, is what we see is there is a big gap between the supply and demand from the talent availability, especially at the fresher level. And that if we can bridge that gap, and that is where again and again, I think everyone is touching upon skilling, right? If the skilling can happen at an early part of their education itself, what probably India is also trying to do. So the skilling doesn't start after somebody graduates. The training for a job doesn't start after graduation, but it starts pretty much when they're in the school stage itself, so that people will have preferred career paths. And then have a work integrated higher education. A lot can get solved because we have excellent pool of people at the fresher level. The second discovery we had is, though we have quite a bit of experienced talent pool, many of them are not into the new age technologies yet, the IT streams yet. So if you look at digital skills, which is much needed today and is on high demand, even in a place like India, Ramesh, there is scarcity of such skills, because obviously when the demand is high, only X number of people with relevant experience in digital can actually get positioned or placed in such jobs. So again, our second discovery is, while we expand in Lanka, we should also invest in the local experienced talent and repurpose them. I would call this term called repurposing. It's very important to repurpose them. While doing so, we also discover there are a lot of people who have left Sri Lanka in search of good jobs in other countries. So we have started running a campaign called Come Back Home. Basically telling them, look, for global jobs and for global careers and for long-term careers, you don't need to look outside your own home. So get back home, and we are going to develop it. So I think the right investment with a clear strategy in terms of what we want to do with the entry level and what we want to do with experienced hires, I think that would be very important if we have to accelerate our growth there. And for that, we are also speaking to many local education institutions and see if we can integrate our requirement what needs to go into the job, right? Very specific job-based content to be integrated as part of their regular coursework. Then that would change the way we operate.
Thank you, Srimati. That was very useful. Key takeaways from. If I can go quickly to Sushila, very much like our trade balance, like our balance of trade with India, there is a disproportionate imbalance in investment from Sri Lanka into India versus Indian investment in Sri Lanka. Both are not enough, but certainly we could. There is scope for Sri Lankan entrepreneurs and businesses, given the vast size of the Indian market, the openness and the ability to access it under the FTA. What advice would you have, Suchira? Sorry.
The advice that I can give is always look at the potential, the scalability that India can bring in, and the supply chain capability that India can bring in to any business will be immense. And especially in apparel, we found that out firsthand, how the whole can actually be much greater than the sum of its parts, especially considering that the locations are just 2-3 hours away in a flight. You can move your experts very quickly to overcome many issues that you have either in India or Sri Lanka and vice versa, and really create an ecosystem that can help propel growth. And initially, when you set up as well, we received a lot of support from the state government of India, from the government of Andhra Pradesh. There were incentives that helped us get off the ground very quickly in the early years. But ultimately, that scalability that we could create by having our presence in India really helped us grow as a group very fast. And it's something that our customers are now actively seeking, and we are known for that scalability and known for that flexibility. And we saw that during the pandemic as well, the ability to quickly adjust our capacities and cater to the customers and stick to our commitments to the customers increased by many folds. Simply because we had that scalability in India. So that's something that I'd like to leave with the forum to consider.
Thank you, Sushila. And if I can, before coming to Manoj, if I can come back to Adil, I think Honorable Prabhu also mentioned it that as pharmaceuticals and the many facets of pharmaceuticals, including medical tourism and education surrounding it, and the ability to create possibly large-scale, high-end zones for Indian investment or all types of investment in the industry in Sri Lanka. What is your view on that, Adil, and what would your advice be to other Indian businesses? I think, yeah.
I just missed a part actually the question. Can you just repeat once? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think there has been articulation both in India and Sri Lanka about the opportunity in Sri Lanka for growing the pharmaceutical business, not only just pharmaceuticals, but all facets of the industry, including, through zones and technology and education and possibly even medical tourism. What is your view and what would your advice be to potential Indian investors in all those areas about what it be like to come here, or should they be investing here?
So if you see the success story in India, it's been the special economic zones where different states in the country started coming out with their own shops towards, establishing the, manufacturing units, and with a clear roadmap, they have been attracting a lot of investors which move and put across. So example, if you ask Denmark Pharmaceutical, it itself is having its manufacturing units gone across to 5 different states. The reason has been that they have been given tax holidays. They have been given a lot of, opportunities in terms of, shops coming across. And this actually leads to the investor being attracted and going and setting up its manufacturing units. The same applies to Sri Lanka as well. And I see the intent is already being seen. So, the presidential subcommittee coming up with setting up the special economic zone. What they need to work upon is to, create a clear roadmap of how, the government already is promoting about the buyback scheme. But, buyback may not be the only opportunity which an investor would look like. Investor will always look into that how I can expand my business. And for expansion, outside markets are the ones which one has to look into. Exports in medicine is not, it's like, I start manufacturing and tomorrow it will, go up and I can sell into any market. It requires a lot of, certifications like from the US FDA or UK MHRA. And these certifications play a vital role that what level of a technical know-how the country has in terms of the preparation for these plants to get these certification. And there I see a strong collaboration where India is already gone advanced, at least I would say is like 10 years back when Sri Lanka is at this stage. And therefore, those collaboration, bringing that technical guidance to Sri Lanka will add a lot of value. Of course, medical tourism is another area because healthcare setup in Sri Lanka is quite organized. And I would say definitely it is quite advanced because, most of the doctors get trained in UK or maybe they go to Australia for at least 1 year of training. That brings them a lot of understanding of what kind of a healthcare setup it is. So with an organized healthcare setup, medical tourism is another area which can be promoted along with tourism itself. As of now, I see a process tourism department has been working, but it's like, we are just capitalizing the beauty of Sri Lanka. But the beauty of the medical, infrastructure is something which we need to explore. And today's world is all about marketing. How we go and market ourselves is all about. Tomorrow,
Thank you,
right. Thank you.
Thank you. And lastly, Manoj, I don't think there's too much scope for another oil major from India into Sri Lanka. But if you look at, you mentioned, and again, there was a lot of mention by the Honorable Suresh Prabhu about keeping Sri Lanka clean and green. And you said that there were many initiatives with respect to solar in your within IOC in Sri Lanka. Can you maybe give? Is there any advice you'd like to give potential investors in renewable technologies and renewable energy who might, because India is leading the way at the moment in areas like solar and wind around the world, both from an infrastructure perspective as well as from an equipment perspective. Is there any advice that you can give about opportunities in Sri Lanka? Manoj?
Sir, there is a tremendous potential for renewable energy in our country, Sri Lanka. Like if we go by the policy documents of our Honorable President, Vistas of Prosperity and Splendor, like it has been coined out over there, there is an ambitious plan that the renewable energy should have a 70% component in the energy mix by 2030. So that in itself, is a clear-cut indication of what thrust is being levied by our government out over here. So now say for instance, why talk only about fossil fuels, right? Wherein we are giving away almost as much as $16 billion US, on an annual basis. So now a lot of thrust is also being paid by our Honorable Energy Minister on the biofuels. There are vast tracts of land available over here, and there's a big plantation of Kekuna, Anduna, Mizak, all these other biofuel plants, and so there is a lot of scope for production of the biofuel mass, which when mixed with petroleum products can serve the purpose of providing us the energy. So this is one. Then as I talked about solarization, that is another big one. So that is how it's going to be, sir. And there's a big scope for LNG, like out over here very recently, like 350 megawatts like order has been placed upon CB and Lakhdanawa for the LNG power plant at one of the locations in Sri Lanka. So going forward, ultimately the objective would be to change all the coal-based power plants into LNG. So there's a lots and lots of potential out over here. And with the political stability, with the consistency in the policies, with the thrust of the government, with the best of support that we look forward to, which we are already started getting it from all the concerning departments. There is no looking back. I would only call upon all my fellow part investors out over here to come to this beautiful country with the best of resources and the best of government support right now available to you to make your footprints very strongly embedded over here, sir.
Thank you, Manoj. I think we have a fan amongst us, a Sri Lanka fan. But I think we are very much out of time. But very quickly, I think there are some high-level takeaways from what our panelists have come through. One is about HCL, about talent at fresher level, at not necessarily post-grad, but at fresher level, and skilling that talent and inducing that into the education system. I think that's a key takeaway. Sri Lanka has recognized that, making school leavers employable as well, and that's a very valuable input. And obviously, any initiatives in that direction would be useful. Repurposing existing talent and come back home. I mean, those are, Sri Lanka has had a brain drain, and I think that's those are, if more companies began initiatives like that, and again, looking on at some of Manoj's sentiments, people coming back home, I think we're going to see some of that as well. I think Suchira made two great points. One about the scalability in India, the ability to scale, both in terms of market size and in terms of supply chain, and the proximity factor. Now that works both ways for Indian investors and for Sri Lankan investors. I think the sheer proximity of our two countries and the ability to reach Sri Lanka from both coasts of India or central India, you're the best. We are best connected. There's a question about the flights. When are they starting? I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that yet, but I would think very soon, most likely come April. And I think that proximity factor really needs to be taken cognizance of by both by the investors on both sides. And on the pharmaceutical, but again applicable to several other industries, the importance of zones of SEZs and special economic zones, and carving out special. Sri Lanka is doing that already with the financial center, with Colombo Port City, with the has had historically great successors in places like Katunayaka and Diagama. And really, there is, I think, case in point for bilateral and regional focus on doing specific zones and economic zones. And I think, Manoj, your conclusion in terms of the opportunity available here for renewables is for sure, and not just in supplying energy here, but also in producing in technology. There's a lot of raw material here that can be used in it. So I'd like to thank our four panelists for very insightful remarks. Thank you very much for your time, and we've run over by about 20 minutes. I'd like to thank also the CII and the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, the CII, for putting this together, and of course for all the support from the High Commission here in India, to His Excellency Gopal Bagle and his team. And thank you very much from me.
Thank you all.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Everyone.
Good wishes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Good day. Good day, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
So we come to a close of this session. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.